Saturday. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm in the car right now, as you guys can see. But I wanted to come on here because I have been processing something today for the last couple of hours or so, and it has been truly mind-blowing to me specifically, and very, eye-opening and sobering, okay? And so, as you guys can see by the title, I'm talking about stop holding people up. So I shared something on my Instagram page at Zion Studios, ZYON Studios, and I was talking about how a lot of times, and I shared it in my previous video, how I hit 23K, right? And what I realized is that a lot of times we are holding people up from receiving what God has for them because we are we're the ones holding them up, right? We don't want to get on camera. We don't want to say what needs to be said. We don't want to be honest. We don't want to be truthful. We don't want to be transparent. We don't want to communicate, right? We're holding people up because we are judging ourselves. We're having these inner monologues and inner thoughts that no one has said. No one has even brought up. But you created that in your head, and you are holding people up from receiving what God has for them, right? You're being selfish, right? We're being selfish by not saying what God gives us to say. We're being selfish by not doing what God has called us to do, and stepping out and taking the risk. And not only is it hindering us, but it's also holding other people up, right? It's holding people up from experiencing the goodness of God, the love of God, the peace of God, the joy of God, right? The relationship with God, because we're failing to open up our mouth. We're failing to get on camera. We're failing to do all these things. And even in my own life, it was just really eye-opening for me to see, okay, where am I holding people up? Like, I was looking back to last year and, the past few years that I've been on social media, building a social media presence and all of that stuff, just how I've been, holding my own self back and holding other people up by not being consistent. That's the greatest hindrance, is us not being consistent and showing up, right, daily. Us not being consistent in, doing the work. All of these things are very important. And so when we're not consistent, it's holding people up. It's holding people up from the freedom that God has for them. It's holding people up from experiencing those things. And from experiencing what you have to offer. Again, like I mentioned, God has given us things to share, right? But if we don't believe that we have something worth sharing, then we're not going to share. We're going to hold back. We're going to be stingy. We're going to think that everybody knows it. We're going to think that it's not that important. It's not that big of a deal, which is a lie. So those are just some things that I have been kind of processing through and thinking about, and asking God to help me with, right? And once you realize that that's an area, or those, you have different areas that, need to be worked on, or you've gotten to the root of those things, you can then go to God and say, Lord, help me in this area. Help me to forgive myself. Help me to implement new strategies. Help me to be consistent. Help me to show up. Help me to stop holding people up. Help me to move out of the way, right, so that God can do what he needs to do in and through you. Because, again, at the end of the day, we're just vessels, right? We are literally just vessels that God chooses to use by his grace and his grace alone. And so when we recognize that and we realize that we are servants, I was listening to a podcast this morning, the Social Proof podcast, and one of the statements that was mentioned is how we have to look at ourselves as public servants, right? When you are showing up online and you have a business and you are marketing and all these things, and you're just, you're on online presence, or you have a public platform, you are a servant. At the end of the day, we are just servants of the Most High God, especially if we belong to the Lord Jesus Christ. And so as a public servant, when we come in that mindset, it's not about us. It's not about what makes us comfortable or what keeps us, familiar. No, it's we are there to serve. God, what do you need me to say today? What do you need me to share today? What do you need me to talk about today? Who do you need me to minister to today, right? Who do you need me to converse with? Who do you need me to help, God? What did you give me to create that will help people, right? How can I serve the people that you've called me to? All of those things are important for us to think about, and it keeps us out of the way. Like, we have to move out of the way so God can do what He wants to do in and through us. And that's the biggest way for us to be able to do that, is to remember that we are vessels for God's use, right? And so, yeah, and not just vessels, but we're also sons and daughters. Like, at the root of it, at the core of it, we are His sons and daughters. And so before we are servants, before we show up on a platform, but before we, give to people, we need to make sure that we're giving unto the Lord. And even through our giving to people, right, we're doing it in Colossians, don't quote me. It's somewhere in Colossians. It's like, do this as unto the Lord, right? And so if we keep that mindset, we won't be holding people up. We won't be holding people up from their freedom, from their deliverance, from them moving to the next level, because we realize, what I'm saying, we're doing this as unto the Lord. It's not for just personal gain. It's not, granted, there are personal benefits that we get from being obedient to God and doing what He's called us to do, and helping others and serving others, right? Like, there's personal benefits, especially if you have a business or you have a product or a service, right? All of those things. But at the core of it, what is your motivation? Like, what is at the root of why you do what you do? What is at the root of, why you don't do what you're not doing, right? Like, what's at the root of you not getting on camera when you know you're supposed to be on camera? What's at the root of you not showing up in your business when you know God has given you the business? What's at the root of you not doing the work in your heart and in your mind and in your life, right, to be prepared for the relationship that God has for you, for the life that God has for you, for all of these things, right? And so, yeah, those are just some things that I've been thinking about, pondering on. If anyone else is in the same process, like, let's let the comments. Yeah, hope you guys are having an amazing Saturday, and I will check in with y'all later. Peace.